Okay, so looking at this first lesson that we're doing today, sorry guys, we have to back up all the way to the beginning here. Okay, we are using the guess and check method. Okay, so we're factoring quadratic expressions using guess and check. So what we're looking at here is trinomials. Okay, trinomials, of course, we know from our previous unit have three parts to them. Okay, so what they look like, the general structure is ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b, and c are just numbers. Okay, now the way the guess and check method works is we want to start by creating our two binomials. Okay, now each binomial is going to have an x part, as we can see. Okay, blank x and then blank x blank. Okay, now when we look at this, we want to guess two numbers that multiply to my a term for my first term in each factor. Okay, so whatever this number is, we want to guess two numbers that multiply it. So for example, if a was 6, we could guess 3 and 2. Okay, so that's our first guess. Our second guess is to choose two numbers that multiply to my c number for the last term. Okay, so if this was 10, we could guess 5 and 2. Okay, we just need to guess two numbers for both a and b that multiply to whichever we're looking for here. Okay, and this is where we put them. So this diagram will help you. Now, for the check part, we want to check, does the outside product, again, product is when you multiply, does the outside product...
We will continue with the sophomore
Sorry, one sec, guys.
Registration. So if your last name begins with the letter M through the letter Z, please report to the auditorium at this time with your device and completed registration form. Also, if there's any juniors who are at the North Campus or still need to register, you may report at this time also.
Registration time. Okay, so we are checking by checking if the outside product and inside product add up to bx. Okay, so our middle term, we want to take this times this and that times that and see if they add up to my middle term. Okay, if they do, we're good. If not, we need to try and guess again. Okay, so let's look at the problem here. So for the first one, I have 2x squared plus 13x plus 20. Okay, so I want to start out by making my binomials or my factors here. Okay, I need two numbers that multiply to 2. Well, this one's going to be pretty easy, right? 2 and 1. Okay, so 2x and just x. The reason that there's not a 1 here is because that's not common practice to write a 1 there. Okay, so I have 2x and x. Now I need two numbers that multiply to 20. My first guess is going to be 4 and 5. Now notice, guys, I put those plus signs there because my last term needs to be a product, right? It's a positive 20. So I need two numbers that multiply to positive 20. 4 and 5 do, in fact, multiply to positive 20. But just keep in mind, okay, negative times a negative also multiplies to positive 20. So just because we have two positives here doesn't mean you should count out negatives as an option for your factors, okay? So now we've guessed both of our time, or both for A and C. Now we're going to check. So we find our outside product. 2x times 5 is 10x. And we find our inside product. 4 times x is 4x. Now we need to take the sum or add together these two. 10x plus 4x is 14x. Well, 14x does not equal 13x. So we know that our guesses were wrong. Okay, so now my next guess, look at this subtle difference that I made here. The subtle change, excuse me. In the bottom one, I have 2x plus 5 and x plus 4. So the only thing I did here was switch around the place of my 4 and 5. Otherwise, everything else stayed the same. So there's another guess. That's how quick these guesses can be, or that you can find these guesses, okay? So let's check the product, okay? 2x times 4 is 8x. 5 times x is 5x. Well, 8x plus 5x is 13x. So we know that my second guess of 2x plus 5 times x plus 4 is my answer, okay? So we know that's right. There's a check mark right there. Okay, now on to the next one. Now we're going to factor this one. 2x squared minus 9x plus 9. Okay, so again, I start with my binomials. I need two numbers that multiply to 2. Again, I'm going to choose 2 and 1. 2 is pretty easy. And now I need two numbers that multiply to 9. Okay, my first guess, I'm going to choose two negatives. I'm going to have -3 and -3. Now the reason I have two negatives here, guys, is this. A negative times a negative is a positive. So we know that it checks out there. But let's take a look at my middle term. My middle term here is negative. So if I would have made these positive 3s, would I ever be able to add two positive numbers to get a -9? No, right? But a negative times a negative is still a positive, but now I have a chance to get my negative number as a middle term, okay, because they're both negative. So I'm going to check my outside products. 2x times negative 3 is negative 6x, and negative 3 times x is negative 3x. Now let's look at this. Negative 6x plus negative 3x is in fact negative 9x. So it checks out, okay? So this is something that we should be able to recognize. If I have a positive last term and a negative middle term, both of these are probably going to be negative, okay? Because a negative times a negative is a positive, and I have to somehow get a sum of two numbers that is negative. And we can never add two positive numbers together and get a negative number, okay? So let's look at the next one, number 3. I have 3x squared minus 14x plus 16, okay? Now, create my binomials. I need two numbers that multiply to 3. Again, this one's pretty easy for us because 3 and 1 are really my only two options there, okay? Now let's take a look at 16. I need two numbers that multiply to 16. Let's take a look at my middle term too, just to see what kind of numbers we're looking for here. This is negative, but my 16 is positive, so I'm going to know for a fact that both my second numbers are going to be negatives because, again, like the logic with the last one, we need them to add to negative 14, okay? So I chose negative 4 and negative 4. So my outside product, 3x times negative 4 is negative 12x, and negative 4 times x is negative 4x. Well, negative 12x plus negative 4x is not negative 14x, so we know that's not right. Okay, so now we need to do a second guess. So my second guess, I chose 3x and x for my first terms again. Then I chose negative 8 and negative 2 this time, because negative 8 times negative 2 is still 16. And of course, they're both still negative because we needed them to add to a negative number. So let's check this one out. 3x times negative 2 is negative 6x, and negative 8 times x is negative 8x, and negative 6x plus negative 8x, of course, is negative 14x. Okay? So again, that one took us two guesses. Now, it might depend on how many guesses each problem is going to take us, okay? It depends on how good you are at guessing and identifying what you need and where you need it, okay? So, number 4, I have 3x squared plus 16x minus 12. Now, this one gets interesting. My first term is going to be kind of the same routine that we've been doing. I need two numbers that multiply to 3, okay? 3 and 1. Now, my last term, we notice, is negative here. So if my last term is negative, we need to be able to tell that one of my terms is going to be positive and one's going to be negative because positive times negative is a negative. Okay, so we know that if my last number is negative, I need to have one part positive, one part negative. Okay, now my first guess, I chose 3 and negative 4, so positive 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. So we know that part's good. Now we need to find my products and check. Okay, 3x times negative 4 is negative 12x. And 3 times x is 3x. Well, negative 12x plus 3x is not positive 16x. So now we're going to have to redo this. Okay, so my next guess, I did 3x plus 2 and x minus 6. My outside product is negative 18x. My inside product is 2x. Now this is where it gets interesting. I have a negative 18x plus 2x. That's negative 16x. But I need a positive 16x. So maybe there's something we can do with my second guess to slightly change it to where it'll work for my true factors, okay? And what I do there is I swap these, okay? If I take negative 18x plus 2x, I get a negative 16x. If you ever get the opposite sign of the middle term of what you're looking for, just swap your last two terms with each other, okay? So 3x minus 2, or sorry, swap your signs. Sorry, guys. You want to swap your signs. Okay, negative 18x plus 2x is negative 16x. It's the same number, just wrong sign. So we need to swap our signs. Okay, sorry about that. 3x times 6 is 18x, and negative 2 times x is negative 2x. Well, or 18x minus 2x is 16x. Okay, number 5. I have 8x squared minus 6x minus 9. Now this one's going to get a little interesting because we have a different opportunity here for the first term. Okay, so I'm going to guess for the first one, 4x and 2x. And for the last one, I'm going to guess, of course, I have to have a negative and a positive. I'm going to guess negative 3 and positive 3. Okay? Now when I check this, 4x times 3 is 12x, and negative 3 times 2x is negative 6x. Well, 12x minus 6x is positive 6x, but I need a negative. Okay? So of course, the new trick we just learned, the only thing we have to do is switch our signs. Okay? The negative was on the left up here. The positive was on the right. Now over here, the positive is on the left. The negative is on the right. Because I got the right number for the middle term, when I added these two together, just the wrong sign. Okay, so now I need to take the products again. I get 6x and negative 12x, and of course that does equal negative 6x. Okay, for the last one, 15x squared minus 11x plus 2. My first guess, I'm going to choose 3x and 5x. And for my last term, I'm going to choose two negative numbers because, again, my middle term is negative, so I need both of these to be negative. Okay, negative 1 and negative 2. I'm going to check. 3x times negative 2 is negative 6x, and negative 1 times 5x is negative 5x, giving me negative 11x. So I ended up getting that one on the first guess, and it checked out on the first one. Okay, so that is it for today.